The Cybertron series of games was certainly a treat, until it wasn't. I'm yet to review the core Cybertron trilogy as of this video, but regardless, I'm going to review perhaps the least talked about spin-off in that sub-series, a game released for the Wii known as Cybertron Adventures. I played a lot of Transformers games before I started doing YouTube, but this is an exception. I just never got around to playing it, and after seeing the gameplay, I can see why. Cybertron Adventures looks, feels, and plays like a cash grab spin-off made for those who didn't have a high definition system. If you were one of those losers in Activision's eyes that only played on Nintendo, it was either this or the DS games, and even then you were better off with the DS games. After playing Cybertron Adventures, I can see why people didn't like it. Cybertron Adventures was created by Next Level Games, and High Moon, from my understanding, had little to do with this specific game. I would define this game as a low-tier Wii game, as the Wii and DS had terrible quality control. Maybe not as bad as Steam, but there were a lot of crappy games companies were churning out, and Cybertron Adventures was one of them. Opening up Cybertron Adventures, it doesn't actually look half bad actually. You suspect it'll be a downgraded Wii version of War for Cybertron, and that's where the game punishes you for your naivety as soon as you start playing the damn game. You'll immediately notice that this game rips control away from you often, and that you have no freedom of movement. As Sideswipe, we drive along a linear path in a linear way. You are forced to go into the direction the game wants you to go. And with the Wii sensor, shoot everything in your path. Then, as soon as you transform back into robot mode, it clicks. This is essentially a rail shooter, akin to something you'd see in the arcade, if any still existed by that point. Maybe it did in 2010, but I wouldn't hold my breath for today. Arcades are old news. For a Wii spin-off, is this really the best they could come up with? A rail shooter where you basically just need to aim the Wii remote and shoot enemies. I know it may seem like I'm insulting games like this, but this game in particular should have just been an arcade game. But I suppose since arcade machines were a dying fad, they needed to milk as much money from you as possible with what was easily the most accessible console at the time, the Nintendo Wii. The original War for Cybertron sold quite well for a Transformers game, but this, I hope it didn't make a single cent. I couldn't find much about this game, aside from it existing and that no one liked it, least of all critics. Let me describe the gameplay. The game does the movement for you, so you can forget about that. Then you go into cover, and you use the Wii sensor to aim at enemies and fire away. You have like 4 weapons, and one of them might vary depending on the character you play as. In the first level, you play as Sideswipe, who plays just like every other character, except maybe he has a different-ish weapon to another character, but that's it. You can also go into cover, which is not as complex as, say, Grand Theft Auto 4 or anything. Aside from that, there's not much to describe from a gameplay standpoint, because the gameplay is almost non-existent. There's no strategy aside from shoot enemies before they kill you. This has to be one of the most paper-thin Transformers games I've ever played. Since the game moves for you when you clear out enemies, there's no fun in finding cover or anything like that. And again, why wasn't this just an arcade game? The game also becomes frustrating and annoying once you move on to the second level. What the hell could be so bad about the second level? Why, the security system, of course. This is just tedious. You're supposed to stay out of cover and fire at the security system when it's not looking, but there's a beginner's trap in the form of the fact that you need a powerful enough weapon, as if you just use a low damage weapon, it'll take the hit and sound off the alarm. Enemies themselves are forgettable. They are generic goons that don't get you to change your strategy. They're just something to shoot. From what I've bothered to play even, there was only one enemy that tries to flank you by approaching your position. All the usual Decepticon enemies should shoot at you, and I played this game on normal. It was not as challenging as I expected it to be. Sure, timers were a pain in the ass, but aside from that, this game is fully survivable. Not that I bothered to make it through to the end because I got frustrated and left. Besides, not like this game has much content. there's a challenge mode that I couldn't be bothered to try, and I didn't even touch the Decepticon campaign. As for story, there is no story. It's just the usual, here's context, this is what we're doing kind of story. The story isn't the main focus. From what I played, it's based on the War for Cybertron main game itself, but without anything interesting like references, callbacks, and maybe this Wii game does have callbacks, but it doesn't bother to make you pay attention to any of it. For a game called Cybertron Adventures, you'd think that it would be, well, you know, an adventure. Not a damn chore that makes you wish you were washing the dishes instead of this shit. I remember my mother asked me if I wanted to get this game, and for some reason I said no. I don't know if it was instinct, or if I somehow knew this game wouldn't be worth a shit, but I was very, very lucky that day. And I'm only playing this game now to review it. And with that being said, I think that pretty much wraps up this video. Sorry there wasn't a lot to talk about, but to sum it up, this game has bare bones design that shouldn't have come out on the Wii specifically, meh graphics, no story or really anything to be invested in. Cybertron Adventures gets a final score of 2.5 out of 10, and that, for context, is my highest, most generous score. Activision certainly were milking the Transformers license for all it was worth, weren't they? Now, update. When it comes to the restored Transformer game multiplayer servers, I couldn't exactly get to that because, well, my PC won't start the damn game. Windows 11 is a curse, isn't it? Because I heard it works fine on Windows 10. Oh well, I guess I'm stuck playing the other games until I get this specifically fixed. So in the near future, expect me to discuss the portable games, and I've been getting a heavy request from a certain someone for the Java games. And to that person, I'm sorry that I haven't gotten around to it, but I'm having trouble getting it to run. With that being said, that concludes this review of Cybertron Chores. I'm JJ Plagiarisms, and until next time, what are stories but mystery boxes?